So Liverpool continued stumbling towards the Premier League finish line with a 2-2 draw with West Ham United today. And if you're looking for positives, perhaps the biggest one is that Jurgen Klopp's side are one game closer to the end of a season that really has fallen apart in its latter stages. But there are elements to take from this for Liverpool, I suppose, and one is that, you know, because of the poor form recently, when they do go 1-0 down, you're starting to think, well, this is a guaranteed defeat. You know, West Ham have got their tails up. Liverpool are struggling mentally and physically at the moment. And, you know, you would have put a lot of money really on the fact that having fallen behind late in that first half, that Liverpool were on the way to defeat. But this is a team that, you know, now has picked up 28 points from losing positions in this Premier League season, and obviously you don't want to have to keep fighting back, but they did at least show in the second half that fighting spirit is still there. They haven't completely given up on things, and they did well to not just get back in the game but also get their noses in front, and it looked like they were heading towards a victory really that would have been so welcome after recent results, and would have felt like a little bit of a, as I say, statement really that this team is still fighting and wants a strong finish to the season. But unfortunately they concede another sloppy goal, yet more poor finishing in that second half, and really they have been the story, haven't they, of recent weeks in terms of Liverpool not really taking the good opportunities that they create and then allowing a goal from nothing, just pure sloppiness really in defence gives the opposition something, and then West Ham find the way back into the game, and Liverpool have to be forced to settle for a really disappointing 2-2 draw. And I think, you know, it's a performance that really in the second half you would have said Liverpool merited more. I mean, they create more than West Ham, the XG is higher, but it's just that, like I say, the ability to keep missing chances is unbelievable. You know, the poor finishing they've been showing of late, that was shown again. And as I say, that sloppiness in defence, and those two, when you combine them, you know, sloppiness in defence and a lack of cutting edge in attack, that is a one-way ticket really to losing or dropping points in football games. And we've seen enough evidence of that in recent weeks, but it was really hammered home again here with a 2-2 draw, all that Liverpool could get. Now there was another sour note in this one with Mohamed Salah and Jurgen Klopp also seemed to be clashing on the touchline, and you know, you don't want this to really turn into a nightmare end to Jurgen Klopp's reign, do you? Obviously it's disappointing. It's not going to be a Premier League title win or even a Europa League win like everybody hoped for, but it also doesn't need to end really negatively either, with players falling out with the manager. I mean, you know, I do wonder whether, if Mo Salah didn't know that Jurgen Klopp was leaving the club at the end of the season, would we have seen that sort of argument on the touchline? I don't think so, and I think we really don't want to see that sort of, those falling outs or this to really end on a sour note, do we? And I think, you know, there's obviously been some sort of clash there. Words said Jurgen Klopp really wouldn't open up about it on his post-match interview, didn't really want to talk about it, but I thought it was kind of interesting, as I say, that, you know, would Salah have done that when things were going well under Jurgen Klopp and his authority wasn't within question? I don't really think so, and I think, you know, he's got to think himself as well that his position going into next season is not absolutely guaranteed. You know, 1 year left on his contract. Is that interest from Saudi going to come? I just thought that was an interesting side note really to everything else we saw, and as I say, not something I think you would have seen in the best years under Jurgen Klopp, or at least when there was no doubts over sort of the manager's authority, or no doubts that he would be there in the future. So really sort of that added another disappointing element to the day for Liverpool, and you don't want to see any more of that now between now and the end of the season, that's for sure, because, you know, it just adds to that feeling of negativity that you're already getting from what have been kind of, you know, a poor run of results. I think if there is one upside to this run that Liverpool has been on of late, and the manager kind of joked about this really, didn't he, is that, you know, when the new manager comes in, it actually feels like there's room for improvement. It feels like a fresh start might actually be welcome. So maybe that's the biggest positive you can take from the day for Liverpool in a really disappointing result. But as I say, it's really tough to cling to those when it's the season has fallen apart in the way it has of late. Now, I'll go through the player performances as usual and start with the goalkeeper, and I thought he made some really, really good saves in this game, actually. He makes 6 saves across the game, and a couple of those really good. One of them I really recall, I thought was a great save in the first half. A deflected shot comes his way, and he does well to sort of adjust himself quite late in the day, really, to grab it up above him. And I thought it was a really good save. One really good one low down to his right as well that I recall. I think one thing the goalkeeper will be disappointed, Alisson, today about is what happened around the second goal. Not the actual concession of the goal itself, but in the build-up, He spills a simple cross in a way that you very, very rarely see him do, and it keeps the pressure on Liverpool. West Ham recycle it, and the ball comes back in, and eventually that's where they score the goal from. But there is quite a big section of play separating those two incidents. So while I think Alisson will be disappointed with himself, I don't think that's to blame for the goal. Liverpool should have got back in better shape. They should have dealt with it better. They had plenty of opportunities to do that. So not to blame the goalkeeper for that, but I think it's one element of his performance he'll look back on with a little bit of regret. Now, I move into the defence now and talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold. And it kind of fascinates me, actually. I think every time Liverpool concede, it seems to be Trent's fault, whether he's near it or not. And I think that's kind of unfortunate, really. And I've seen a little bit of it today around West Ham goals that he's not really involved in, and somehow seems to take the blame for it. I suppose people do have their thoughts in football and things that they cling to, but and I don't think he's a perfect defender by any means, but I think sometimes you've got to say that it's all about balance with Trent, isn't it? What does he bring to the team versus what does he take away? And I think this is one of the games where overwhelmingly, really, and I think this has been the case since he's come back, really, that the positives he gives to the team are bigger than the negatives. So 3 chances created today. He takes 4 shots himself. I think he did okay against Kudus, who's one of the more dangerous wingers in the Premier League as well. You can't stop them every time. That's just not going to happen. And I thought he largely dealt with him okay, stayed upright, didn't dive in, tried to sort of force him down the line and did okay in that element. And as I say, the chances created, some of his passing was out of this world. I thought he would look really creative. Some of his passing deserved better finishes as well, or better decisions, because it put Liverpool in great positions, but it just wasn't getting used. And I felt similarly at Goodison, actually, that a lot of what Trent was doing on the ball was so positive, but just wasn't being made the most of, and that's been a little bit of a theme recently since he's come back into the side. But I don't think he should be particularly blamed around any of the goals today. And like I say, I thought his passing was absolutely out of this world. So we know he's got a big role to play going forward, don't we, for Liverpool? It's just one where they really need to get him nailed down to that contract, and he can be a big part of the Arne Slot era, can't he? So I thought he showed why that is the case today, certainly with some of his unbelievable passes to put Liverpool on the front foot. Now, move into the centre halves now. Start with Jarell Quansah, and I think he'll look back on the equalising goal that West Ham get with a little bit of disappointment. Antonio just does him with a great bit of movement, obviously finishes it well with his head as well. But just the way he sort of pulls him in and then pulls back to give himself a yard, and the ball just drops over Quansah's head because he doesn't read it. And I thought it was a really great bit of movement, great ball from Bowen. But Quansah, of course, will analyse that moment and look at it and think he could have done better. But he's not to be too critical of him, a young defender who's done well, really, really well this season when he's come in. And I mean, the statistics here show he had a fairly decent game as well. 5 out of 8 aerial duels won, 3 out of 6 ground duels, 5 headed clearances, 3 out of 3 tackles as well, so not too bad. But as I say, I think that goal, he'll look back and maybe think, could I have done better around that. He's very self-critical anyway, we know that about him, so I'm sure he will look back on that moment with a little bit of regret. And I'll talk about Van Dijk as well alongside him, and this has been a real theme in recent weeks, actually. It doesn't kind of get talked about enough, is that I feel like he's struggling to influence games because teams are just pulling away from him. They're going nowhere near him, and that is shown in the fact that, say Quansah's involved in 8 aerial duels, 6 ground duels. Van Dijk wins 2 of his 2 ground duels out of 2, but he's only involved in 2. 1 aerial duel out of 2, he's only involved in 2. He just doesn't seem to be able to, it used to be it's always been the case that teams have gone nowhere near him. They don't want to be near him because they know he's better than whoever his partner is, so they'll try and sit on the other player. But it's kind of strange how uninvolved he is at the moment in terms of, did he used to change his position to drag himself across to find ways to be the man who's on the end of the headers? I'm not sure, but it can't be the case that you can constantly go through games not being involved, because that is a function or a feature of what the opposition's tactical plan is. Is there any way to get him to be the man on the end of it, to do the defending at times? Because obviously you need that to happen sometimes, because the goals that Liverpool concede, Van Dijk is nowhere near them, but it used to almost be that every ball that came into the box, he'd be the one who was heading it away, whether it was in his zone or not. That maybe that's just a little quirk. Some of those things happen in football from time to time, but as I say, Liverpool conceding goals, it's not really got a lot to do with Van Dijk, and yet you almost feel like he should be there, as he almost seemed to used to be, to prevent these things. So, let's say, not a poor performance by any means, but can he be more involved? Can he help Liverpool a little bit more? Perhaps as a way to work that one out. Now, I'll finish up the defence with the left back, Andy Robertson. I was quite critical in my video from Goodison Park in terms of the quality I thought he showed in the final third, and I thought a little bit better on that front today. I mean, for starters, he scores a goal, which is a really, really good finish. He takes that really well. That's not an easy chance. Goalkeeper can probably do better, but from Robertson's perspective, he gets a really good contact on it. It's coming up. It's not an easy one to finish either, and he does really well with that. Also creates 5 chances as well. Shows real energy down that touchline to get Liverpool out. And I know there are some question marks people raised around Robertson's future and whether Liverpool needs to sign a left back under the new manager, and it's an interesting one. He's 30 years old. He's probably never going to be back at his peak level as he was, but the manager's got a decision to make there. Is he handy enough to be around it? Can he be? How much first team football can he play next year? And I think you saw in a performance like this that he's still got a lot to give. Like I say, may never be absolute peak level, but I still think he can be dangerous in the final third. I think he's got that energy he always brings. And I think you kind of saw that in his performance today. So as I say, interesting debate around him, but he didn't do himself any harm today. And I'll move into the midfield now and start with holding role and start with Wataru Endo. And I thought a performance really kind of summed up how things have been going for him of late. Obviously, he was out of this world really in that run that Liverpool were on, where they just kept winning every week, and been a real surprise package this season, because I don't think people expected an awful lot of him. But I think there's been almost a balancing out of late, that he hasn't been quite that top class level, even though he's not. I thought in the last couple of weeks actually put in some really poor performances. Seems to have come out of that dip, but he's still not hitting the level he was beforehand, when he was really sort of dominant in midfield. And 3 out of 8 ground duels, he'd usually be above 50% in that statistic when he was really flying. 3 out of 5 aerial duels, which is pretty handy actually against a team like West Ham, who were physical. They want to put the ball in the air and try and win it there. But so that was a really decent statistic. But an 88% passing accuracy, again, when things were going really well, he was the other side of 90, I felt, and really, really safe on the ball. And if you lose the ball in that position where he is, it's a real moment of danger. That starts a counter-attack, no question about it. So he needs to be the other side of 90, really, and he wasn't in that regard. And as I say, just not quite at the level he was before. And I'd say kind of similar as well of Alexis McAllister, really. I thought he actually played quite well, and 4 chances created, wins 2 out of 3 tackles. So not a poor performance, absolutely not. But 6 out of 16 ground duels won. Again, he would be way over 50%. Maybe even 3/4 of those he'd be winning when he was in his absolute peak form, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, when he was the dominant player in the Liverpool team. So we're seeing a little bit of a dip from him. He's absolutely not helped by what's going on around him, and I have no doubt that fatigue has been a massive issue for him. Played too much football this season, when in periods where Liverpool basically had no midfielders available, so that has no doubt harmed him. But I think you are seeing a little small dip from him, and obviously that's not helpful in terms of how Liverpool are performing as a whole. But I'm sure more to come from him next season. Still been a good season from him overall, really good debut season. Very excited about what he can achieve under a new manager as well. And so he's going to be a big player for Liverpool, no doubt about it. But a little bit quiet recently, or quieter anyway. Now I finish off the midfield with the one who I thought performed best out of any of the starting 3. Really was really impressed by him, and that's Ryan Gravenberch. And I talk about future under a new manager. You've got a player here who's 21 years old. He's had some ups and downs this season, but I think people forget how old he is. I think he's got so much to give, and I think he's shown a lot of real promise actually in his performances, and definitely in the latter part of the season where he's had more games, that injury aside, that was very unfortunate timing, but more games where he's put it all together on both sides of the ball, and today was absolutely one of those. It's a tough place to go, West Ham, let's not forget that. And I thought he did really well in there. I mean, 9 out of 13 ground duels won, so he's doing the defensive work. He's winning his battles in that position. And then also on the other side of things, 3 shots, 2 chances created. So he's bringing all that creativity and threat. And also 7 out of 8 dribbles completed, which is a really remarkable statistic, really. I mean, that's one of the reasons you want him in the team, is because he's got quick feet to break the lines. That's one of the reasons Liverpool signed him for. He brings that X factor in those sort of number 8 positions, especially against mass defences. And to complete 7 out of 8 dribbles, that showed you that he was absolutely doing that. He was creating space for others. He was creating space for himself to either get a shot away or play the pass in for the chance, or funnel it out wide. I thought really good all-round performance from Ryan Gravenberch. Really enjoyed watching him, and as I say, I think he's got a big future to come. Dutch manager coming in will absolutely help him, and so yeah, I think big things to come from Ryan Gravenberch, and performances like this kind of show why. Now moving to the front 3 now, and I'll start with Harvey Elliott. And I must say about Elliott, I don't absolutely love him in this wide right position, particularly when the man he's replacing is Mohamed Salah. You really notice the sort of difference in terms of pace getting in behind, and that kind of hurts Elliott in that position. But I didn't think he did too badly. I mean, 0 chances created is obviously not great for a player who's in the front three, but he gets 4 shots away. He wins 6 out of 12 ground duels, so doing okay in that regard. He's winning his battles half of the time, which is roughly a sort of an okay performance basically. So, but I don't necessarily think he's massively helped by being on that right hand side, because his preference is to be on his left foot. He does like to cut inside an awful lot. Now, that is actually not a massive issue when you're in sort of the centre of the pitch, because he's always going to have the option to, yes, he's going to likely want to cut inside if he keeps possession, but he's always going to have an option on his right hand side to pass the ball out to. That doesn't happen when you're out on the wing. It's basically the defender has it easy because they always know he's going to come inside. He's not going to have a man on his outside, or very rarely if you get an overlap, which is not always something Liverpool do with their right back. Obviously, is it when it's Trent Alexander-Arnold? He wants to be inside as well. So I think it hurts Elliott a little bit in that position. But as I say, 4 shots, not too bad. Ground duels, he did okay on that as well. So not a shocking performance by any means, but not his best either. And I do think he's best served being in that centre of the pitch where he's at least got an option on his right, and then he can cut in and be really dangerous from there. So I think that's something that new managers got to solve around him. Is do I put him in my central midfield? How many games does he start next season? But I think regardless, I think this season's been a massive step forward for him. Some really good performances, and I think he's got another one who's got a young player who's got a big role to play going forward under a new manager. So interested to see how that goes. Now, talk about Cody Gakpo next, and Liverpool's form in the front line hasn't been great recently, but I actually think Gakpo has been one of the standouts really, and I think he sort of continued that form today. I mean, he takes 8 shots, creates 2 chances, gets kind of lucky with the way the goal goes in, let's be honest. I'm not sure he was aiming for it to have 3 deflections on its way in, so that was kind of fortunate. But if you don't buy a ticket, you don't get yourself in the position, you don't score goals. And we always hail Darwin Núñez for getting shots away. So the fact that Gakpo takes 8 shots, he buys that look, doesn't he, around the goal, because he's in the positions to create. And we always say Darwin Núñez is a shot machine. That's why he's important for Liverpool. Gakpo did a lot of that today, and other elements of his game I really loved. 5 out of 10 ground duels won, so kind of winning his battles at an okay rate. But 5 out of 7 aerial duels. One thing I think about him is, the size of him, he should be winning more aerial duels. Sometimes he can get bullied, and I thought 5 out of 7 today against a big West Ham team, really good, helpful for getting Liverpool up the pitch as well. So thought he did well in that, and also 3 out of 3 tackles won as well. So again, he can do the defensive work, do the gritty stuff, and it's interesting what the manager thinks of him going forward, the new manager, in terms of, does he like him in that central position? Does he see him more of a winger? I think you think back to the when he first came into Liverpool, that sort of the back half of that season when he came in January, played really well in that central position. I just think there's a big decision to make around him. I thought again, decent in that position again today. So, interesting to see what the new manager thinks about him. One thing you will criticise him for today is obviously the goal that gets West Ham 1-0 up. He's beaten to the header by Jarrod Bowen, obviously, who shouldn't be beating him to headers, but I do think there's a real collective blame around that goal. Absolutely everybody in a Liverpool shirt switches off. West Ham take the corner quickly, and the ball's in the box before they know it, and Bowen's got the header. But that, equally Gakpo will look at that and be so annoyed with himself, I'm sure. But I think that was a collective blame for that goal, absolutely, because I thought, Liverpool, as I say, completely switched off as a whole, and that was a really poor goal to concede, which, as I say, has been a little bit of a theme recently. Now, I'll talk about Luis Diaz now to wrap up the front three, and I think, as much as Gakpo's impressed of late, I think he has been almost the informed one out of the all the forward options. Obviously, not been happening for Salah. Jota's been injured, and obviously Núñez has been out of form really badly as well. But I think Diaz and Gakpo have been pretty decent actually in that time, and kind of continued that again today. I thought Diaz was very good again. Gets the assist for the Robertson goal. He takes 3 shots, creates 7 chances. He was an absolute menace, really, sort of, running all over West Ham. His dribbling was so dangerous, just creating holes in the defence all the time. 4 out of 7 ground duels won. I mean, the only question mark I'd have over Diaz really today was, why did Klopp bring him off? I mean, it's not like Liverpool have got games coming thick and fast at the moment, is it? They've only got to play these Premier League games until the end of the season. Did that need to be changed when he was playing so well? I don't really think so. I thought it was odd to really kind of take him off, because I think he's been a real threat recently. I mean, again, he's another one. There's going to be interest in him over the summer. Do Liverpool give him a new contract, because they probably have to with the timing now, or do they sell him? That's a really interesting decision. Do they think they can maybe get someone who scores a few more goals as good as Diaz has been at times this season? I think that's a really interesting debate, but obviously not one to discuss after a disappointing 2-2 draw with West Ham. Now, I'm not going to go into the subs, because I just think they didn't have an awful lot of time on the pitch, and really it was kind of dead time in the game at that point, really, where West Ham were just seeing it out and not an awful lot happened or big influence on the game, really. So I'm gonna leave it there pretty much. That was my review of the game and how I thought the individual performances were. As usual, let me know in the comments what you thought. How disappointing is it that the season is petering out in this way, and how did you think Liverpool played today, and how many points do you think they're going to get over the next few games? Because obviously not long left in the season. I think there is an upside in that. I'd say that 75 points is definitely enough to secure you Champions League football. I know mathematically it's not, but I can't imagine Spurs and Villa winning all those games to get back in the mix, really, to be honest. So I do think Liverpool will finish at the worst third, but as I say, it's been a disappointing end, and I'd love to hear your views on it as well. Now, if you can like and subscribe, as I always say, how helpful that is to the channel, and particularly at the moment, because it's a really good time to get involved. We've got the summer coming up, and obviously I will be bringing all the transfer news I can, what's happening around the new manager and how things are settling in there. So it's a really, really good time to get on board with the channel. I'm also actually closing in on 1 million views, which is unbelievable. Cannot believe how much support and how many people watch these videos, and can't thank you enough for that. And of course, the season's not over yet, so there's more press conferences to come, more matches to come. So I'll see you guys very, very soon.